Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Supremacy, watching as the Imperial fleet entered the Dark World sector. The formation was impressive. 200 of the Empire's most advanced warships, including the 3 prototype vessels that represented the pinnacle of Imperial military technology. "Sir," reported Captain Stryker, "our sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the sector. Whatever the Orcs are hiding, it's big." The gravitational distortions were unlike anything in Imperial records. Entire star systems seemed to exist in a state of quantum flux, their positions shifting and changing as if space itself was being manipulated. It was technology that the Empire's scientists had theorized about but never successfully implemented. "Communications from Imperial Command," announced the signals officer. "Emperor Maltorn himself is requesting a status update." Thorne activated the secure channel, and the Emperor's image appeared on the main view screen. Despite his advanced age, Emperor Maltorn radiated the power and authority that had held the Empire together for nearly a century. "Admiral," the Emperor began, "the situation has become more serious than we initially anticipated. Our intelligence services have detected Orc uprisings on 47 worlds. More importantly, several of our subject species are beginning to question their loyalty to the Empire. Your Majesty, the fleet is prepared for any contingency. If the Orcs have built some kind of hidden civilization, we will crush it." "I hope so, Admiral. Because if we fail here, the Empire itself could collapse. The Orcs' broadcast has awakened something we've spent centuries suppressing, the idea that the Empire's rule is not inevitable." As the Emperor's image faded, Thorne reflected on the magnitude of the challenge before them. The Empire's strength had always been based on the belief that resistance was futile. If the Orcs could successfully defy Imperial authority, then every subject species in the galaxy would begin to dream of freedom. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "we're detecting energy signatures consistent with artificial structures. The computer is having trouble getting a lock. It's as if the targets are phasing in and out of normal space." "Show me," Thorne ordered. The main view screen displayed a tactical map of the surrounding area. Dozens of contacts appeared and disappeared, their positions shifting in patterns that defied conventional physics. But even through the interference, the scale of what they were seeing was apparent. "My God!" whispered Captain Stryker. "Those aren't just ships, they're mobile cities." The worldship Vengeance materialized out of subspace like a dark dream given form. Its massive hull, stretching for hundreds of kilometers, was covered in weapon emplacements that dwarfed anything in the Imperial fleet. But it was not alone. 11 other worldships were taking position around the Imperial force, their combined firepower representing a threat that no Imperial commander had ever faced. "This is Matron Kethera of the Last Clan," came the transmission from the lead worldship. "You have entered our sovereign territory without permission. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Thorne studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possible strategies. The Imperial fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage: the prototype vessels from Project Resurrection. These ships incorporated technology that had been developed specifically to counter advanced alien civilizations. "Open a channel," he ordered. "This is Admiral Thorne of the Intergalactic Empire. We are conducting a lawful military operation in Imperial space. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Kethera's response was a burst of laughter that echoed through the bridge speakers. "Imperial space? Admiral, you are in the heart of the Orc homeland. Your Empire's claims to sovereignty here are as false as your claims to have civilized our people. Matron Kethera," Thorne continued, "I respect your people's courage, but you are facing the combined might of the Imperial fleet. Your ships may be impressive, but they cannot stand against the full power of the Empire." "Perhaps," Kethera replied. "But we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for the memory of all the Orc worlds your Empire has destroyed, all the Orc children who have died in your mines, all the Orc warriors who have been broken by your chains." As she spoke, the space around the worldships began to shimmer with energy. The Orcs were powering up weapons that operated on principles the Empire barely understood. But Thorne was not without resources of his own. Activate the resurrection protocols, he ordered. All ships prepare for combat. The 3 prototype vessels began to glow with an inner light as their experimental weapons systems came online. These ships represented the Empire's answer to the growing threat of alien technology, vessels that could adapt and evolve in response to any enemy they encountered. "Sir," reported the weapons officer, "the resurrection ships are reporting full readiness. Their adaptive armor systems are analyzing the enemy weapons signatures." "Then let's see how advanced Orc technology really is," Thorn muttered. "All ships engage at will." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Imperial fleet attacked in coordinated waves, their combined firepower focused on the nearest world ship. But the Orc vessels responded with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics, energy beams that curved around obstacles, missiles that phased through solid matter, and defensive fields that seemed to absorb and redirect incoming attacks. "Direct hit on the world ship Vengeance," reported the tactical officer. "But sir, their hull is showing no damage. It's as if our weapons are having no effect." Thorn watched in growing alarm as the Orc vessels began their counterattack. The world ship Vengeance unleashed a barrage of energy bolts that carved through the Imperial formation like a scythe through wheat. 3 cruisers were destroyed in the first volley, their hulls vaporized by weapons that operated on principles the Empire had never encountered. "The resurrection ships are adapting," reported Captain Stryker. "Their armor is beginning to show resistance to the Orc weapons." The 3 prototype vessels pushed forward, their adaptive systems analyzing and countering the Orc technology. But for every adaptation they made, the Orcs seemed to develop a new form of attack. It was as if the 2 sides were locked in a technological arms race that was being fought in real time. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Emperor." "Put it through," Thorn ordered. Emperor Malthorn's image appeared on the screen, his face grave with concern. "Admiral, I'm monitoring the battle from the Imperial capital. How long can your fleet hold out?" "Unknown, Your Majesty. The Orc technology is more advanced than our intelligence indicated. We're taking heavy casualties." "Then it's time to implement the final protocol," the Emperor said quietly. "Admiral, I'm authorizing the use of the Stellar Devastator." Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. The Stellar Devastator was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a device capable of destroying entire star systems. It had been used only once before, during the suppression of the Andromedan Rebellion, and the moral implications of its use were staggering. "Your Majesty, the Stellar Devastator will destroy everything in the system, including any Orc civilians. The Empire's survival is at stake, Admiral. If we allow this rebellion to succeed, every subject species in the galaxy will rise against us. The Orc civilians are unfortunate casualties, but the alternative is the collapse of our civilization." As the Emperor's image faded, Thorn found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. The use of the Stellar Devastator would indeed end the Orc rebellion, but it would also make him responsible for the greatest act of genocide in galactic history. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the world ships are beginning to withdraw. They're pulling back to defensive positions around the inhabited worlds." Thorn realized that the Orcs had recognized the threat. They were no longer trying to destroy the Imperial fleet, they were trying to protect their civilians. It was a tactical move that revealed both their strength and their weakness. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Prepare to deploy the Stellar Devastator. And may God forgive us for what we're about to do." Gracthal stood in the command center of the world ship Vengeance, watching the tactical display as the Imperial fleet repositioned itself for their final assault. The Orc defenders had fought bravely, but it was clear that the Empire had resources they had not anticipated. "The adaptive technology on their prototype vessels is remarkable," reported War Chief Gorath, the last clan's military commander. "They're learning to counter our weapons faster than we can develop new ones." "It's not just their technology," Matron Kethera added grimly. "The Imperial fleet is being reinforced by ships from across the galaxy. They're throwing everything they have at us." Gracthal studied the sensor readings, his tactical mind analyzing the Imperial formation. There was something about their positioning that troubled him. They were maintaining a much greater distance than necessary for a conventional assault. They're preparing something, he realized. Something that requires them to be far away from the blast zone. What kind of weapon could? Kethra's voice trailed off as understanding dawned. The Stellar Devastator. They're going to destroy the entire system. The implications were staggering. The Stellar Devastator was a weapon that could trigger a star to go supernova, destroying every world in the system. It was the Empire's ultimate threat, a weapon so terrible that even the thought of its use was enough to suppress most rebellions. How long do we have? Gracthal asked. The charging process takes approximately 6 hours, Gorith replied. But once it's activated, there's no way to stop it. The star will collapse, and everything within 10 light-years will be vaporized. As if summoned by their conversation, Admiral Thorne's image appeared on the main view screen. His face was grim, but his voice carried the weight of imperial authority. Matron Kethra, he began. I am prepared to offer you one final opportunity to surrender. Lay down your weapons and submit to imperial justice, and I will guarantee the safety of your civilian population. And if we refuse? Kethra asked, though she already knew the answer. Then I will activate the Stellar Devastator. Your entire civilization will be erased from existence, and the Orc rebellion will end with your deaths. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the command center understood the magnitude of the threat. The Empire was prepared to commit genocide rather than allow the Orc rebellion to succeed. Admiral, Kethra said finally, you speak of justice, but what justice is there in the murder of billions of innocent civilians? What justice is there in the destruction of an entire civilization? The justice of imperial law, Thorne replied coldly. The Empire's survival depends on maintaining order. If we allow one species to successfully rebel, then every subject race in the galaxy will follow their example. The collapse of imperial authority would mean chaos and war on a scale never before seen. Then let there be chaos, Gracthal interjected, stepping forward. Let there be war. Because the alternative is eternal slavery for billions of sentient beings. Thorne's attention turned to the scarred Orc commander. You are the one who started this rebellion. Your name is Gracthal, is it not? The terrorist who destroyed Mining Station Omega-7? I am the one who freed my people from your chains, Gracthal replied proudly. And I will die before I see them enslaved again. Then you will die, Thorne said. But you will die knowing that your rebellion has accomplished nothing. The Empire will survive, and the Orc species will be extinct. As Thorne's image faded, the command center erupted in urgent discussion. The Orc leaders debated their options, but the conclusion was inescapable. They could not defeat the Stellar Devastator through conventional means. There is one possibility, said Chief Engineer Vortak, who had been studying the sensor readings of the Imperial fleet. The Stellar Devastator draws its power from the target star itself. If we could somehow disrupt the energy flow, we might be able to prevent the weapon from firing. That would require someone to get close enough to the Imperial fleet to target their weapon systems, Gorith observed. It would be a suicide mission. Not necessarily, Gracthal said, his mind working through the tactical possibilities. What if we don't try to destroy the weapon? What if we try to redirect it? Kethra looked at him with growing understanding. You're suggesting we turn the Stellar Devastator against the Imperial fleet itself? Exactly. If we can modify the weapon's targeting systems, we can cause it to focus its energy on the Imperial ships rather than the star. It would destroy their fleet and save our worlds. The technical challenges would be enormous, Vortak warned. We would need to penetrate the fleet's defenses, access the weapon's control systems, and reprogram the targeting parameters, all while under heavy fire. Then we'd better get started, Gracthal replied. Because in 6 hours, our civilization dies unless we act. As the Orcs prepared for their desperate gambit, Admiral Thorne was overseeing the final preparations for the Stellar Devastator's deployment. The weapon itself was housed within the largest of the prototype vessels, its exotic matter core drawing power from the ship's multiple fusion reactors. Sir, reported the weapons chief technician. "The charging process is proceeding on schedule. We should be ready to fire in 5 hours and 37 minutes. "Excellent," Thorn replied. "And our defensive screens?" "All ships have been equipped with stellar radiation shielding. Even if the Orcs attempt a final assault, we'll be protected from both their weapons and the supernova's initial blast wave." As Thorn watched the preparations, he found himself thinking about the moral implications of what they were about to do. The destruction of the Kethmora system would indeed end the Orc rebellion, but it would also make him responsible for the greatest act of genocide in galactic history. But the alternative was even worse. If the Empire fell, the resulting chaos would lead to wars that would consume the entire galaxy. Billions would die in the conflicts that followed, and the hard-won peace that the Empire had maintained for centuries would be lost forever. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're detecting movement from the Orc fleet. 3 of their smaller vessels are breaking formation and moving toward our position." Thorn studied the tactical display. The Orc ships were approaching at high speed, but they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. It appeared to be a desperate last-ditch attack. "Let them come," he said. "It will be their funeral." But as the Orc vessels drew closer, Thorn began to realize that this was no ordinary attack. The ships were moving in a pattern that seemed designed to penetrate the Imperial formation rather than engage it directly. They were targeting something specific. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the Orc vessels are on a direct course for the Devastator platform. They're trying to reach the weapon." "All ships intercept those vessels," Thorn ordered. "Do not allow them to reach the weapon platform." The Imperial fleet responded with devastating firepower, but the Orc ships seemed to dance between the incoming missiles and energy beams. Their pilots displayed a skill and daring that impressed even the hardened Imperial veterans. "They're not just trying to reach the weapon," Thorn realized. "They're trying to board it." As the first Orc vessel slammed into the Devastator platform's docking bay, Thorn understood the true nature of their plan. The Orcs weren't trying to destroy the weapon, they were trying to capture it. "Security teams to the Devastator platform," he commanded. "Repel boarders at all costs." The battle for the Stellar Devastator had begun, and the fate of both civilizations hung in the balance. The Orc assault vessel Retribution shuddered as it smashed through the Imperial docking bay's defensive screens. Grackthel led the boarding party through the smoking breach, his massive frame filling the doorway as he surveyed the scene beyond. The Devastator platform was a marvel of Imperial engineering, its corridors lined with exotic matter conduits that pulsed with barely contained energy. The weapon itself was housed in the ship's core, protected by layers of security that had been designed to withstand any conventional assault. "Remember," Grackthel called to his team, "we're not here to destroy the weapon. We're here to reprogram it. Zara, you'll need to access the primary control systems. Thorgrim, you and your team secure the approach routes." The sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors as Imperial security forces responded to the breach. The first wave of defenders arrived just as the Orcs were establishing their beachhead, and the narrow confines of the ship's interior erupted in close-quarters combat. Imperial Marines were elite soldiers, trained to fight in the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. But they had never faced Orcs who fought with the desperation of a people facing extinction. Grackthel's warriors carved through the defensive line with a ferocity that left the Imperial forces reeling. "The control room is 3 levels down," reported Zara, consulting the schematics they had stolen from Imperial databases. "But we'll have to get through the security checkpoints first." "Leave the checkpoints to us," Grackthel replied, hefting a captured Imperial plasma rifle. "You focus on the technical aspects." As they fought their way deeper into the ship, Grackthel couldn't help but admire the weapon they were trying to capture. The Stellar Devastator represented the pinnacle of Imperial weapons technology, a device that could harness the power of a star itself, and redirect it as a weapon of unimaginable destruction. "Contact front," called Thorgrim as they approached the first security checkpoint. "Heavy resistance, they've got the corridor covered with automated turrets." The checkpoint was a kill zone, designed to stop any unauthorized personnel from reaching the weapons control systems. But the Orcs had faced similar defenses in their years of servitude, and they knew how to overcome them. "Smoke grenades," Gracthal ordered. "And remember, we need to take this checkpoint intact. If we damage the control systems, we won't be able to reprogram the weapon." The assault was swift and brutal. The Orcs moved through the smoke like ghosts, their enhanced senses allowing them to navigate the obscured corridor with ease. Within minutes, the checkpoint was secured, and they were moving toward the weapon's core. "Sir," reported one of the Imperial technicians to Admiral Thorn, "the Orcs have breached the second security checkpoint. They're making steady progress toward the control room." Thorn studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possible countermeasures. The Orcs' plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than trying to destroy the weapon, they were attempting to turn it against the Imperial fleet. "How long until the weapon is ready to fire?" he asked. 3 hours and 42 minutes, sir." "And how long until the Orcs reach the control room?" "At their current rate of advance, approximately 30 minutes. Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. If the Orcs succeeded in reprogramming the weapon, the entire Imperial fleet would be destroyed. The rebellion would not only survive, but it would be equipped with the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for emergency evacuation. If the Orcs succeed in their mission, we'll need to retreat immediately." But even as he gave the order, Thorn knew it was probably too late. The Stellar Devastator's range was enormous, and the Imperial fleet was positioned well within its kill zone. If the Orcs succeeded in reprogramming the weapon, there would be no escape. Deep within the Devastator platform, Gracthal's team had reached the final security checkpoint. Beyond this point lay the weapons control room, where the targeting systems and firing mechanisms could be accessed. "This is it," Zara announced, studying the massive blast doors that protected the control room. "The locks are quantum encrypted and keyed to Imperial neural patterns. It'll take me at least 20 minutes to bypass them." "You've got it," Gracthal replied. "We'll hold this position no matter what." As Zara worked frantically on the lock mechanisms, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the corridor. The Imperial forces were mounting a final counterattack, bringing everything they had to bear on the small group of Orc infiltrators. "They're coming in force," reported Thorgrim, checking his weapon's power cell. "At least 2 full companies of Marines, plus heavy weapons support." Gracthal nodded grimly. "Then we make our stand here. For the memory of all the Orc worlds that have fallen, for the children who will never know freedom if we fail." The battle that followed was epic in its intensity. The Orcs fought with the courage of the desperate, holding their position against overwhelming odds. Every corridor became a killing ground, every room a fortress to be defended to the last breath. "I'm through the first layer of encryption," Zara reported, her hands flying over the control interfaces. "But there are 3 more layers to go." "Keep working," Gracthal called back, even as he fired his plasma rifle into the advancing Imperial forces. "We'll buy you the time you need." As the minutes ticked by, the Orc defensive line began to crumble. They were vastly outnumbered, and despite their courage and skill, they were being slowly pushed back toward the control room. "Sir," one of the Imperial Marines reported to his commander, "we've got them cornered. They can't hold out much longer." "Good," replied Colonel Marsh, the Imperial security chief. "Admiral Thorn wants those terrorists captured alive if possible. The Emperor has questions for them." But as the Imperial forces prepared for their final assault, Zara's voice rang out through the corridor. "I'm in. The control systems are responding." The blast doors slid open, revealing the heart of the Stellar Devastator. The control room was a cathedral of technology, its walls lined with displays showing the weapon's status and targeting information. At the center of the room was the primary control console, where the weapon's parameters could be adjusted. "How long do you need?" Gracthal asked, taking position at the control room's entrance. 5 minutes, Zara replied, her hands already working on the targeting systems. "Maybe less if I can access the automatic sequences." "You've got it," Gracthal said, raising his weapon as the Imperial forces charged toward the control room. "Just remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for the future." The final battle had begun. The control room of the Stellar Devastator became a maelstrom of violence as Imperial Marines poured through the entrance. Gracthal stood at the center of the chaos, his massive frame silhouetted against the glow of the weapons control systems, fighting with the desperation of a warrior who knew this was his last battle. 2 minutes! Zara called out, her fingers flying over the targeting controls. I've isolated the firing sequence, but I need to recalibrate the focus arrays. Behind her, Thorgrim and the remaining orcs had formed a defensive circle around the control console. They were down to their last few rounds of ammunition, and the Imperial forces showed no signs of slowing their assault. Sir, one of the Marines reported to Colonel Marsh. We've got them surrounded. They can't escape. Then finish them, Marsh ordered. But be careful around that console. We can't risk damaging the weapon. As the Imperial forces closed in, Gracthal found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From the mining station where he had first learned of his people's true history, to the Dark World sector where he had discovered the last clan's hidden civilization, every step had led to this final confrontation. Done! Zara announced. The targeting systems are reprogrammed. The weapon will fire on the Imperial fleet instead of the star. How long until it's ready? Gracthal asked, even as he fought off another wave of attackers. The charging sequence will complete in 90 seconds. But even as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. A stray plasma bolt from one of the Imperial Marines struck the control console, sending sparks flying and causing several of the displays to go dark. The firing controls are damaged, Zara reported, her voice tight with concern. I can't activate the weapon remotely. Then we'll have to do it manually, Gracthal replied. Where's the manual firing control? In the weapons core chamber, Zara said, pointing to a heavily armored hatch at the back of the control room. But the radiation levels in there are lethal. Anyone who enters won't survive more than a few minutes. Gracthal looked at his companions, Thorgrim, scarred and bleeding but still fighting, Zara, brilliant and brave beyond measure, and the handful of other orcs who had followed him on this desperate mission. They had all sacrificed everything for this moment. Then I'll go, he said simply. You hold them off as long as you can. Gracthal, no, Thorgrim protested. There has to be another way. There isn't, Gracthal replied, moving toward the hatch. And even if there was, this is my choice to make. I started this rebellion, and I'll finish it. As he opened the hatch to the core chamber, a wave of radiation washed over him. The weapon's exotic matter core was a miniature star, contained within layers of magnetic fields and quantum barriers. The manual firing control was located directly adjacent to the core, in the most dangerous part of the ship. Gracthal, Zara called after him. You'll need to hold the firing control for at least 30 seconds to complete the discharge sequence. I understand, he replied, stepping into the core chamber. Take care of our people. The chamber was a hell of energy and radiation. Gracthal could feel the weapon's power eating away at his body with each step, but he pressed forward toward the manual control. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of battle as his companions fought their final stand. The manual firing control was a simple device, a lever that had to be pulled and held to activate the weapon. But the radiation levels were so intense that Gracthal's vision was already beginning to blur as he reached for it. For the last clan, he whispered, grasping the lever. For all the orc worlds that have fallen. For the children who will be born free. He pulled the lever. The Stellar Devastator's discharge was visible across the star system. A beam of pure stellar energy erupted from the weapon, but instead of targeting the system's star, it swept across the Imperial fleet like the hand of an angry god. Admiral Thorn watched in horror as the beam struck the lead dreadnought, vaporizing the massive vessel in an instant. The beam continued its sweep, destroying ship after ship with methodical precision. All ships, emergency retreat, he ordered. Jump to hyperspace immediately. But for most of the Imperial fleet, it was too late. The Stellar Devastator's beam moved faster than their ships could react, and within minutes, the pride of the Imperial Navy was reduced to glowing debris. Thorn's own ship, the Dreadnought Supremacy, was among the last to be targeted. As the beam approached, he found himself thinking about the chain of events that had led to this moment. The Orc rebellion had begun with a single act of defiance on a mining station, and now it had destroyed the most powerful fleet in Imperial history. "Sir," reported Captain Stryker, "we've got maybe 30 seconds before the beam reaches us. The hyperspace drive is still charging. Then we go down fighting," Thorn replied. "Signal the Empire. Tell them the Orcs have won." The beam struck the Dreadnought Supremacy, and Admiral Thorn's last thought was of the galaxy that would emerge from the ashes of the Empire's defeat. In the core chamber of the Stellar Devastator, Gracthal held the firing control as the weapon's power consumed him. Through the radiation haze viewport, he could see the Imperial fleet dying, their ships disappearing one by one in flashes of stellar fire. "We did it," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We actually did it." As the last Imperial vessel vanished in the beam's embrace, Gracthal finally released the control lever. The weapon powered down, its deadly energy spent. The Orc commander collapsed beside the control, his body burned by radiation but his spirit triumphant. In the control room, Zara and the surviving Orcs had fought off the last of the Imperial Marines. The enemy soldiers, realizing that their fleet was gone and their cause was lost, had finally surrendered. "The weapon has powered down," Zara reported, her voice filled with exhaustion and relief. "The Imperial fleet is destroyed." Through the ship's communication system, Matron Kethora's voice reached them from the worldship Vengeance. "My children, you have done the impossible. You have freed not just the Orc people, but every species that has suffered under Imperial rule." As news of the Imperial fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy, the Orc rebellion became a revolution. On dozens of worlds, enslaved species rose up against their oppressors, inspired by the knowledge that the Empire could be defeated. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Gracthal's body was found in the weapon's core chamber, his sacrifice having made possible the destruction of the Imperial fleet. He was honored as a hero, but his loss was mourned by all who had known him. In the aftermath of the battle, the last clan began the long process of rebuilding Orc civilization. The hidden worlds of the Dark World sector were revealed to the galaxy, their advanced technology and preserved culture serving as beacons of hope for the oppressed. The intergalactic empire, its military might shattered and its moral authority destroyed, began to fragment. Subject worlds declared their independence, and the rigid hierarchy that had maintained imperial control for centuries collapsed. But the story of the Orc rebellion was far from over. In the ruins of the empire, new alliances were forming, and the surviving imperial forces were regrouping for a counterattack. The galaxy had been changed forever, but the struggle for freedom would continue. As Matron Kethra stood on the observation deck of the worldship Vengeance, watching the stars of the liberated Dark World sector, she thought about the warrior who had made it all possible. Gracthal had died as he had lived, fighting for the freedom of his people and the hope of a better tomorrow. The Orc rebellion had become the spark that would ignite a galactic revolution. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the spirit of Commander Gracthal lived on, inspiring a new generation of freedom fighters to carry on the struggle. The chains of servitude had been broken. The age of the intergalactic empire was ending. And from the ashes of the old order, a new galaxy was being born.